Hello and welcome to Undivided. Welcome to our primary election night special live. Where else would you want to be? I gotta say, there's some disappointing results coming in. There's some promising results coming in. Of course, this is just the first round of ballot drops. They're going to have some updates tomorrow. So, some of them are certainly too close to call. But what we want to do on the show this evening, we want to take your questions. We want to read your comments at the end of the show. But we want to get to key races. And really what we're going to focus on are races we've been talking about on the show for months and months. And also races that have some level of significance outside of the city or the districts where those races are happening. And for me, the key races really are happening in the city of Seattle. And I know people get tired about the focus on Seattle, but we have a unique opportunity to be able to actually reshape City Hall in Seattle. Not only are there 7 of 9 council seats up for grabs in November, but only 3 of them have incumbents running. So you really do, if you're a Seattle voter and you're unhappy with the direction of the city, you have an opportunity to reshape things, to get rid of ideologues, to put people in office who are actually going to take crime seriously, who are going to be supportive of the police. So I want to just tick through quickly some of the results in the key races so far. And again, I would not call these results finalized. The race we have been following the closest is the race for District 7 in Seattle, which is the seat currently held by Andrew Lewis, notorious flip-flopper, and it is the seat that represents the interests of downtown Seattle and its constituents, which I think is the most important position on the council in Seattle because you're talking about the economic engine of the city where you have so much of the workforce and the tourism. So let's get to the results. Much to my surprise, Andrew Lewis is currently ahead in the primary. Remember, top 2 people advance. That's what the primary election is for. Andrew Lewis has 40.9% of the vote. And as of right now, it appears by quite a margin that Bob Kettle, a U.S. Navy veteran, would be advancing to the general election with Andrew Lewis. He's got 33% of the vote. Aaron Marshall and Olga Sagan, both of whom we've had on the show, they're not performing very well. Aaron Marshall's a Seattle police officer who actually works in the downtown area. He's got 7%. And then Olga Sagan, who we've had on the show many times, downtown business owner, she owns Proshki, she has 14%. So if these results hold, Andrew Lewis, by some magical force, could be advancing to the November election. Although I'll say 40% is not great for an incumbent. As an incumbent candidate, you don't want to be below 50%. That is an indictment of you as an incumbent candidate. And when you talk about, Seattle voters and their rejection of Andrew Lewis, you have 60% of voters so far who are rejecting Andrew Lewis. So that is significant, and that's not a good place for him to be as an incumbent. I guess, there's a part of me that is truly surprised, though, that he would even be performing at 40% so far, given some of his egregious, not only lies in the campaign trail, but the state of downtown. I mean, you go down there and the drug crisis and the homelessness crisis, and it is a place that is almost unrecognizable from where it was 5-10 years ago. And if you're a business owner downtown, if you live downtown, I can't imagine you're happy with that. And so for 40% of people so far in the primary to say, yep, I'm going to stand behind the guy who's currently representing us at City Hall is actually pretty bonkers to me. And I had mentioned the lies that Andrew Lewis has told on the campaign trail, and it hurts me deeply if people are believing them. He put out a flyer saying that he's leading the way on public safety, which is just about the most laughable flyer I've ever seen. But look, candidates lie like that because it works. They gaslight like that because it works. Not everyone is as entrenched in politics and city council meetings and votes as you guys are. I mean, you watch and listen to a show that's about local politics. I mean, I host a show that's about local politics. So if you're a candidate and you want to get away with your poor track record on public safety, yeah, just print up some flyers that flat out misrepresent your record and send them out. And some people who aren't watching the news every day are going to believe those. So we'll get back to that race and talk about it more, but let's tick through some other results. I asked you guys on the show, I think it was on Monday, what incumbent you most wanted to see gone. And it wasn't Andrew Lewis. It was actually Tammy Morales in the 2nd district. And that's because she's sort of Shama Sawant light. She is, I think, remaining after this, besides Shamba Sawant, who's not running for her seat again, the most fringe politician in the city of Seattle. And she represents the 2nd district, which is like SoDo, so Chinatown, the Stadium District, that area, some aspects of South Seattle that have had the most violence, the most shootings. So right now I'll say I'm not surprised by these results necessarily, but Tammy Morales is ahead, 48% of the vote. And Tanya Wu, who I think common sense people have tended to prefer, is at 45%. It's not a surprise to me that those two are heading out of the primary, because that seemed like the very obvious top two finish. But again, Tammy Morales as an incumbent is under 50%. You don't want to be in that place as an incumbent, although right now she's got 5,624 votes, and I would like to meet all 5,624 of those voters. I mean, one of them is probably her, right? She probably voted for herself, but again, I think it's part of that just realization and kind of being honest with ourselves and with all of you about, we tend to look at things from a different perspective, and Seattle voters are very progressive. And so despite Tammy Morales' really poor track record of looking out for the interests of her constituents, particularly the people in the Chinatown International District, she does appear to be heading to the November election. Okay, another race of interest is Seattle City Council District 6. Why do we care about this? Well, the incumbent Dan Strauss is someone who has also been a notorious flip-flopper. He voted, or he ran for his job in 2019, promising to hire more officers. He turned around 6 months later, just like Andrew Lewis, pledged to defund the agency by 50%. And then he too was sending out flyers to voters saying that defund the police was a mistake. I have voted to fund the police over and over and over again. Again, just completely misrepresenting his record. Well, Dan Strauss, in terms of the three incumbents that are running for their seats again, is performing the best in the primary. He is above 50% right now. He's got 50.7% of the vote, so things are looking pretty good to him, for him. And then Pete Hanning is in second place with 29.6% of the vote. So if those results hold, all three of the incumbents in the city of Seattle who are trying to keep their seats appear to be headed toward the November election. Whether they'll keep their seats, that remains to be seen. A couple other seats of note that we want to discuss, not because they have incumbents, but because there's other aspects to the races that I think not only have implications in Seattle, but outside of Seattle as well. Shama Sawant, like I said, one positive heading into this election is that Shama Sawant is not running again. And so I think the people of District 3 in Seattle, up on Capitol Hill and the surrounding areas, they're already winning heading into this, because one of the most divisive, destructive politicians in the history of the city of Seattle, Socialist Shama Sawant, is moving on. And I think that's a very good thing. So who is going to replace her? Well, as of right now, Joy Hollingsworth is leading in the primary, and this is very good news. Joy Hollingsworth, by all accounts, is a very common sense person who loves Seattle, a very common sense candidate. She has 40% of the vote. I think that is very, very good news for the people of District 3 in Seattle, who have had Shama Sawant as their representative at City Hall for a very long time. In second place, Alex Hudson with 32% of the vote. So both of them have a pretty comfortable lead to head toward the November election. All right, a couple more races in Seattle before we move outside of Seattle. In District 5, why do we care about District 5? Well, it's because I need Nicole. Hello, by the way. Welcome to our primary night election special. Hi. I needed one more excuse to play this video.
I know.
So is that okay with you?
Yes.
Oh, I might never get a chance to play it again. So running in District 5 was a woman named Ty Reed. And this freaked me right out, because Ty Reed was worked on the campaign for Nicole Thomas Kennedy, who ran for Seattle City Attorney, who had sent out all these horrible, awful tweets promoting violence, vilifying the police. And back when I was at Fox 13, I did a story on Ty Reed because her tweets were just as bad as Nicole Thomas Kennedy's. Here's a clip of that story. Meet Ty Reed, that's her on the left, the picture taken just a month ago. In it, Thomas Kennedy and current Seattle City Councilwoman Tammy Morales. On Reed's shirt, a flaming Seattle police cruiser and the words, "This is a policy proposal." If Thomas Kennedy's Twitter account is a diary of hatred, Reed's is a diary of violence. June 3rd, 2020, this bitch Mayor Durkan is going to get her ass beat one day. October 2nd, 2020, in response to a shooting in South Seattle, prayers the victim is a cop spelled KKK. Yeah, so that was one of the funnest stories I ever did on TV News. I'll give them credit for letting me do that story. So what do you think? Is Ty Reid looking like she's going to make it past the primary election despite her absolute unhinged behavior on Twitter? Thankfully, the answer is no. At least it does not appear that way. Ty Reid only has 4% of the vote. I'll give Seattle voters credit for that.
And we should say our logo's blocking it a little bit. So she's the second from the bottom.
4.31% of the vote. That's really all you need to know about the District 5 race for the time being. Ty Reid is not going to advance. Just for the sake of one of our dedicated viewers and listeners, Matt Gilbert, let's give people the results in Seattle City Council District 1, which is West Seattle. We care about this, of course, because Matt Gilbert lives there. But we also care about this because Lisa Herbold, who again has been one of the most divisive, destructive politicians in the city of Seattle, not running for her seat again. So that's a win. So looking at the results for District 1, it appears that Marin Costa is in the lead, but with just 29% of the vote. Rob Saka is a close second with 25% of the vote. I will say Phil Tavel, who I think would be the best choice for District 1 voters, he's narrowly behind. He's got 21% of the vote, so that could change. I certainly hope Phil is able to make it through because, again, you're looking at someone who's got a little bit of common sense and really values public safety. Okay, rounding out the City of Seattle races in District 4, let's just check in on that one quick. So you've got commanding lead from Ron Davis, 40% of the vote. Maritza Riviera with 34% of the vote. And again, I'll just kind of reiterate why we've been tracking the Seattle Council races so closely. And look, this is an off-year election, right? It's not the sexiest election. You're not electing a president or senators or a governor. But when you talk about the impact Seattle has on the rest of us, it cannot be understated. And if you have a shift at Seattle City Hall where some of the most dangerous, destructive policies come out of, then that can spell a shift for the rest of the state. So in that sense, it is incredibly important that Seattle voters elect people who want to make meaningful changes on the streets of Seattle, who aren't comfortable with people dying on the streets of drug overdoses, engaging in open-air drug use, who aren't comfortable with homeless encampments that have been allowed to fester for years and years and years, and people who want Seattle to be restored to what it once was just 5-10 years ago and want Seattle to live up to its full potential. So it is incredibly important that the city of Seattle elect some people who have common sense and, in my opinion, reject incumbents. So we will see. Nicole?
This is when I really wish that people still went to the polls because I want to see who's voting in Andrew Lewis's district. I mean, have they set up addresses for all of those drug users? Because I can't imagine
foray into conspiracy.
Living in those blocks and seeing what's happening and saying, yeah, I'm on board with this.
Oh, yeah, this is good.
This sounds good. Like the cops, like police sirens and, fire trucks and aid cars all night long, every day. I don't understand it.
It's unhinged stuff. And I do think that we, really soak in politics in a way where we're kind of aware of all these votes. And, I don't know that every voter knows, like, oh, Andrew Lewis said he'd support police and then he turned on them and he flip-flop again, then he lied and then he gaslit. I mean, it's our job to get that information out to as many voters as possible and for the rest of the media ecosystem to also be honest about the really poor track record that some of these incumbents have. But we also have to realize not everyone is soaking in this stuff every single day. But like you said, and you make a good point, don't you see it? Don't you hear it?
Right.
Don't you see it when you walk down the street?
But the majority, I would say, the majority of people that are walking by it, and those people aren't voting in that district. Obviously, they're working in downtown. So I have lots of friends that work at Nordstrom and I mean, Starbucks, different district. But all of these people that work down there and don't get to vote, but are, held hostage by it, by the environment.
Right.
And so I am trying to picture where all these people that are voting live, right? So I'm guessing high rises, lofts above some of the stores, things like that. And so I want to talk to those people.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so we'll see how all the final results shake out. I will say I'm disappointed that Olga Sagan isn't performing better. Behind the scenes, though, I think she had some serious missteps in her campaign, and we chatted about it. And I heard from members of the business community that they didn't feel like she was taking it seriously. They didn't feel like she was taking the campaign as seriously. It's a dead serious situation. It's really life and death. And I did see kind of a difference between the Olga Sagan that we sat down and interviewed many times before the election and the Olga that we interviewed just on Monday, and the Olga that was out on the campaign trail. It did seem like she took on a different tone. I would have liked her to be a little more forceful about the true failures downtown. But,
she's not a politician,
and
that's what we were looking for.
And
I think that's it, because this is her first time running for anything, and I think she just handled it like a human would handle, or somebody trying to, make it livable for her business, and she actually does live there. I would assume she is not among the majority living near her business and working in her business. That's why I think maybe the business community that she was hearing positive things from, maybe they're not voters in that district.
Well, I think a lot of them are. I mean, they supported Bob Kettle behind the scenes, and Bob Kettle's performing very well. I will say about Bob Kettle, he never came on the show. Right. And I don't really know how to read him as a candidate, his strength as a candidate, his ability to do a good interview. I really haven't seen it. So maybe that was a strategy to kind of stay out of the limelight and just work to get funds. But
I'm okay with his I'm not Andrew Lewis thing. So if you're going to go opposite of Andrew Lewis, then fine, go for it, Bob.
I'm just not Andrew Lewis. I have some issues with Bob Kettle and some stuff he pulled in the last days of the campaign. But let's move on to a couple other races outside the city of Seattle for folks who don't live there. Because one of the other big topics that we've been talking about that is relevant to every single voter in the state of Washington, every single parent certainly in the state of Washington, is what's happening in our public school system. And there is no worse example than the Olympia School District. We've done countless stories on how they're so focused on politics, gender ideology, social justice issues, that they're failing their kids. They're failing the kids in that school down there. And so, I think that if you have voters in Olympia, which is a very progressive place, who want to move on from some of these real fringe school board members, that it would kind of spell good progress and good momentum. Now, I will say there's some positives and negatives. So we've been talking a lot about Talana Reed. So Talana Reed got appointed to a vacant position on the school board to fill it. And then in this election, she's running for Olympia School Board Position 1. And if you need a reminder, Talana Reed, she got her job on the school board, her appointment, despite being caught on video in 2021 at what I would call an anti-cop rally saying this.
You said it all. I won't take that long. I won't take up much of your time. It's raining, but can we say a couple names for just because the police? But I want to say their names. Breonna Taylor and Yvonne McDonald. Both black women were murdered by the police. That's not okay. That's not okay. And so many more lives have been lost. And it amazes me how those pigs can sit over there to watch us peacefully talk about what we want changed in this state. It amazes me. And they don't pay attention until we tear it up. So just before I get started, tear everything up in this city until they do what we want them to do.
Yeah. In a sane world, that person would never be allowed near a school board. But she was appointed to a position. She's now running for district position number 1. And thank the heavens, as at this moment, it does not appear that Talana Reed would move forward, although this is pretty close still. I wouldn't feel comfortable calling this. But she is in 3rd place. But overall, these results are disappointing because Maria Flores is the incumbent in this seat. And again, every single member of the Olympia School Board is an activist. I mean, we've watched countless hours of Olympia School Board meetings. And so to have an incumbent who has focused so much on ideology instead of education performing at 48%, easily beating who is, we've been told by the parents that we've had on the show, the common sense candidate, Andrew Floho, who has just 27%, is disappointing. And I also think it suggests that Maria Flores will keep her seat because Talana Reed, I mean, she still got 25% of the vote. Why? Who wants their child's education to be dictated by a woman who encourages people to tear a city up? Who? Apparently 2,751 people so far. And because Talana Reid, if Talana Reid doesn't move forward to the November election, which it seems like she won't, I mean, those people probably aren't going to give their votes to the more reasonable candidate. So it seems like they'd go to the fringe incumbent, Maria Flores. So that's disappointing. But again, this is the city of Olympia. They have a school board that's full of activists. And so I guess I don't necessarily find it as a surprise that they'd want to keep it that way, although it is a good thing that Talana Reid maybe won't be on it anymore. So we'll have to monitor that and update that one for sure on the show tomorrow when the next ballots drop. But glad I got an excuse to play that video again, too. Okay, in the other Olympia School District position 4 seat that has an incumbent, Hillary Seidel is the incumbent. Again, I don't think anybody on the Olympia School District is fit to, or Olympia School Board is fit to be on it, because we've seen how their meetings go. Their meetings are about race, they're about gender, they're about activism, they're not about education. And unfortunately, Hillary Seidel is winning with 50.8% of the vote. In second place, Leslie Van Leishout with 37% of the vote. So another disappointing result. And look, you know, I think that you do have a lot of parents who are finding their voice, who are willing to speak up and speak out about some of these really egregious issues. And change doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's important for people to keep coming forward, like Alicia Perkins, who we've had on the show so many times, to advocate for their child's education. I would like to see people like the board members in Olympia thrown out of their jobs for the sake of kids. I'd like to see us get to that point. But if we have to take one win, I guess Talana Reid in third place is a good thing. Okay, let's dip way over to the other side of the state quickly. Spokane, the mayor's race there. Right now, so incumbent Nadine Woodward, who's a former TV news anchor, she's a Republican, although this is a nonpartisan race technically. She is trailing to Democrat Lisa Brown. Nadine Woodward has 38% of the vote to Lisa Brown's 47% of the vote. And this is interesting. You know, Lisa Brown, she has run for just about everything that you can run for. I mean, she served in the state house. She served in the state legislature for some time. She worked for Governor Jay Inslee as the head of the Department of Commerce. She ran for Congress. Now she's over in Spokane. She's got Jay Inslee's endorsement. And that is a pretty sizable lead for now. Again, we're still waiting for more ballots to be counted. But I can't imagine Nadine Woodward is terribly thrilled with where she's at. And look, Spokane has had a lot of challenges. We, you know, think of the other side of the state sometimes as being kind of immune to some of these really ideology-driven issues like homelessness being bad. It's not just in Seattle, though, because when you have an issue like homelessness and so much of it, the success or failure on issues like mental health and the drug response is dictated at the state level, even in a city like Spokane that's led by someone who has the political will to arrest people using drugs, who has the political will to clear homeless encampments, sometimes their hands are tied. I mean, Spokane had one of the, actually at one point it was the largest homeless encampment in the state, Camp Hope, and Mayor Woodward was helpless to clear it because it was on property owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation. And so Spokane does have some significant challenges. I can't imagine they'd get better under Lisa Brown. I can't imagine they'd get better under someone who's very similar to Governor Jay Inslee in their approach to issues, particularly when it comes to homelessness and substance abuse. I don't know why people in Spokane would think that those issues would improve, but we'll keep watching that one. All right, a couple King County Council races, Nicole, we should get to, because, again, we get into this issue of, okay, common sense versus ideologues. And can we actually skip to District 8? Is that all right? So the reason this one is just, again, heart-wrenching for me. So there's 9 Seattle City Council members, 7 seats. The other 2 are citywide seats. And one of them right now is held by Teresa Mosqueda, who is a hyper-progressive politician who was leading the charge on police defunding. Well, she's now running for King County Council, and right now she's winning. She's got 55% of the vote, Sophia Aragon at 40% of the vote. So both of them will be advancing to the November general election. But again, you know, Teresa Mosqueda has name recognition. I know that factors into it, but this is someone who is highly ideological. This is someone who has been anti-business. This is someone who really, it's the unions who want her in this position for financial reasons. But she has also been, I think, very anti-cop. She has, like I said, led the charge on police defunding and really the vilification of officers. And I'll just say I know Teresa Mosqueda personally. we used to live very close to one another in Seattle. I've always found her to be a nice person, when you take politics out of the equation. And so I certainly don't want to speak poorly of her as a person, but as a politician, I think she's been very detrimental to the city of Seattle and to public safety. So to take that and just shift it over to King County, I actually think that as a King County councilwoman, she would be less detrimental than, I think you have more power as a Seattle City Councilwoman to really impact things from a public safety perspective, less so as a King County council member. So maybe that's a better place for her to be kind of stashed away. But that was of note. And then we'll check in on King County Council District 4 really quick because you have... I don't know if you have any great options, to be honest. In this one, Jorge Barone is winning 47% of the vote. That doesn't surprise me. He's been a community activist for a long time, particularly on immigration issues, a lot of name recognition, and so that doesn't surprise me. Sarah Reyna, I don't even know how to say her last name, Reyneveld in second place, 31% of the vote. So I do want to make sure that we take some questions and comments from the stream today. I would say overall kind of my takeaways from the primary results. Look, it's hard for me sometimes to put myself in the mind of some of these Seattle voters in particular and King County voters and voters in these really progressive areas of the state that have such an impact on the rest of us. As Nicole was saying earlier, I can't imagine seeing the state of things in Seattle and voting for the same people who are at City Hall. I simply can't imagine that. Tammy Morales, I simply can't imagine voting for the person who has ignored the needs of her constituents who are dealing with severe issues around crime and disorder. Andrew Lewis, who has lied up and down about his record. Dan Strauss, who is flip-flopped all over the place on public safety. All of them appear to be heading toward November. I hope that between now and November, reasonable heads prevail and people can get more clarity on their records. And really, that's the job of the media, to be honest with people about, hey, here's what they said 2 years ago, 3 years ago, here's what they're saying now, here's what's true and here's what's not. And Matt Gilbert just made a good point when I said Teresa Mosqueda is perhaps less dangerous on the King County Council than on the Seattle City Council. Matt said the King County Council gets to pick the sheriff. Technically, the King County Executive gets to pick the sheriff and the council can confirm that appointment, but that is a good point. I mean, King County voters, for some reason, decided that they didn't want to vote for the sheriff anymore, which I thought was just a wild thing. Like, why would you vote away your right to vote and put it in the hands of a politician? But they did, and that's where it is now. Let me see here. Okay, Nicole, are you going to put comments in, or you just want me to take them out of the stream? Just take them out of the stream. Let's see here. Mo Sterling says name recognition works, and I agree. That's a big part of it. When you're not, again, soaking in politics and news coverage that, I recognize that person's name. Great, check that off. Tommy said, I'm going to buy a broken down RV, park it in Soto so I can vote in Seattle. Tommy, if you do that, let us know if it works, okay? Can you register at the location of an RV?
I'm not sure.
I would assume so, because you can vote if you're homeless in Seattle.
Right.
The Shamasawant people would get out there and get all the homeless people to vote.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I bet there's a specific address you can use as a...
Well, yeah, it would be like one of the service centers or shelters or something like that, so...
We do have somebody on Facebook asking if we're going to cover the Talana Reeds being accusing a board president of using the N-word. And we have been following that.
Yeah, I just don't believe her.
Well, I think...
Is there evidence?
Oh, yeah. I think that it was in description or there's some defense to it. I don't know, but we are following it. But yeah, no, it is... I believe she said, yes, I did use it, but it was in, she was like quoting something. Doing something like that.
Well, let's give people context. So there have been all these rumors that Talana Reed, well, not rumors, Talana Reed has publicly stated that one of the other school board members used the N-word around her in her presence and won't apologize. But to me, that's just her using her race to be a victim. If it was indeed, I don't think that people should even read it in a public setting. No. I don't know the context, but Talana Reed is at every event being they did this. And it's okay, well, what does that have to do with whether you'd be a good school board member?
Well, and most of what I've heard is that president was very behind Talana and was part of the reason she was in the position she was in. Yeah. And so people were saying, if you don't have any... if you're throwing her under the bus, then you'll throw anybody under the bus to get what you want. And she was saying, it's not like she used it in a derogatory way, but it's always used in a derogatory way.
Well, right. And that's just why I was like, okay, no one on the Olympia School Board is a racist. I think we can agree that, right? I mean, racist against white people.
Yes.
But, okay, so let me take that back. I don't think anyone on the Olympia School Board is out there dropping N-bombs. Fair? So when I saw that, I was like, okay, clearly they didn't use it in that kind of context. But again, I think Talana Reid is trying to use that as sort of this crutch to like get her through the primary election, to say like, oh, woe is me, this school board member, whatever it is. But I don't know. Maybe we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Yeah. But Talana Reid seems like her campaign is doomed. So maybe we can talk about more important things. Okay, we have a couple super chats to get to. Exploring with the Zuinos. I think I'm mispronouncing that, but says Lewis's cronies groups just listen to their boss and vote that way. Does Kettle have a chance? Will they push Lewis hard or play a hokey stay-at-home dad role? Can they be brash within boundaries? So I don't know if Kettle has a chance. I haven't had a chance to really assess him as a candidate because I haven't heard him speak a lot publicly. I do know that there are members of the business community who thought that he was sort of the best bet and tried to support his campaign. I mentioned earlier he did something that really bothered me and we didn't talk about this on the show, it had kind of come out late, but he sends out this flyer saying, my other two leading opponents likely voted for Donald Trump, which I was like, likely voted for Donald Trump. So he said that based on really just nothing. I mean, Olga Sagan had done an interview with the stranger and they asked her, who'd you vote for in 2020? And she like just kind of freaked out because she said she couldn't remember or something like that. And then Aaron Marshall like participated in a Republican primary. And so Bob Kettle just uses that and he's like, they probably voted for Donald Trump just to fearmonger and vilify. It was so bizarre. So just based on that one flyer, I lost whatever respect I had for someone I'd never met. So I'd like to talk to him and see what his rationale was for that flyer. And again, it was just very divisive. It was without evidence. There is no way to know unless someone tells you who they voted for. You can't see that in records. Just because Aaron Marshall participated in a Republican primary where you have a lot of Republican candidates does not mean he voted for Donald Trump. In fact, he said he didn't. And who cares if he did? So it's just this vilification and the fear-mongering based on Trump that's really bothersome to me. Okay, we have a couple other chats. Leland Taylor says, as long as mainstream media is censored and ideologically controlled, we will continue to lose at the ballot box. Ideologues are low-information voters and will not turn to alternative media, which is the only place to get true journalism. AvGeek Joe said, Brandi, how come Becca Poppy lost to an unqualified Jorge Barone? I don't know that Jorge Barone is unqualified. I mean, he's done a lot in the community. What are the things that would make somebody qualified to sit on the King County Council? I mean, to me, that's a pretty entry-level political position. I haven't been following that race particularly close. But again, I think name recognition has a lot to do with it. And Jorge Barone, I mean, I probably interviewed him a dozen times when I was at Fox 13. He's out there in the community. He has a lot of name recognition, and you can never underestimate that. Did I get the super chats, Nicole?
Did you get Pegasus?
I don't know. I don't.
Political makeup of these candidates? Question mark. That's a question.
Hold on. Where are you seeing that?
Moderate or progressive?
Sorry, where are you seeing that?
It's in blue.
It's in blue. Where?
Just trust me. That's the question.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Pegasus.
Political makeup. I see it. Political makeup of these candidates, mod or progressive. Which ones? I mean, everything in Seattle are different shades of blue, right? So you don't have any besides like the occasional weird once in a century Ann Davison victory. I think that in some of the Seattle City Council races, I'd consider them moderate for Seattle, like Bob Kettle, Olga Sagan, Aaron Marshall. I think they're moderate for Seattle. But I don't think any of the incumbents, I wouldn't consider them moderate. I don't consider it a moderate position when you say you're going to defund the police by 50%. That puts you way outside the realm of being a moderate. Okay, any other ones you want to read to me that I can't see because I'm just like technologically challenged?
That's good.
I got the super chats, right?
Watching them, but yeah.
Yeah, Joe said we could have had a budget expert in Poppy. Wonder why Barone is catching fire.
People just want parents voting for school board members.
Oh, well, how would you do that? But I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Because I think that one, you could become a parent. You might not be a parent, but you might be someone like my age who's thinking about becoming a parent, and I think you ought to have a say in the direction that a school district goes in. But also, all of our money, you're not just like, you're still taxed even if you're not a parent to help fund our education system.
Right,
So your money
exactly.
is going to it. And it would just be weird if you had to like prove that you're a parent in order to vote. I don't want the government having like that much control over voting.
We just got another.
Oh, okay. You want to read it?
Yeah, what is this? Average
Average Joe. Brandi,
Yeah.
Becca Poppy is the King County budget director and is highly knowledgeable. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe she just didn't have, again, the name recognition, but if she can, where is she at? Can you pull back up that particular King County Council result? Wait,
Yeah.
I might have it here. I can read it. Hold on. Yeah, she's in third place, and it doesn't like she's pretty far behind. 20% of the vote. Jorge Brown's got 47, and Sarah Reineveld has 30% of the vote. So yeah, she might be. I think for people who are wonky who follow government, they'd be like, "That's the budget director," but I don't think average voters sort of know that. Let me see. Exploring says, "Thanks for hosting, Brandi, and for helping Nicole." Oh, thanks for hosting, Brandi. I thought it was like, thank you, Nicole, for hosting me. I was like, oh my God, that's funny. Okay. It's late. We're usually morning people. Matthew says, I was at a Subway in Seattle and a couple guys attacked me with... Oh, you don't get it, do you?
I haven't even read that one.
He said, Matthew Cook said, I was at
a
a Subway in Seattle and a couple guys attacked me with MAGA hats. Was it the dead of winter? Might you have been in Chicago? Did you have a noose around your neck? Let me see here.
Matthew, we saw on Saturday at the Freedom Fest.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it on the show yet.
We did. The Freedom Fest was so much fun.
So fun.
So fun. I loved it. And we sold a lot of t-shirts.
And we should do more of fests like that.
You just told me I need to stop doing events because we're overbooked.
Well, fun ones like that.
It was fun.
And I think it's good for voters. I think it's good to go out there and feel like you're not the only ones in King County that feel like this, that feel alone in King County.
Yes. Andy Stevens says, Bob Kettle, who looks like he's going to move forward and challenge Andrew Lewis in the general election, had Kettle not released that flyer, I'd be donating to him tomorrow. So that's the flyer like saying, my opponents might have voted for Trump with no evidence. Look, I tend to agree, although part of me is just like, I still want Andrew Lewis to crash and burn. I think that there have to be consequences to the behavior that he has engaged in for the last 4 years. If there's not, then what's stopping every politician in Seattle and in Washington State from behaving in the same way? I mean, Democrats already feel untouchable. They have the House, the Senate, the governor's office. They've had it for 40 years. I mean, obviously, they have universal control with the exception of Ann Davison in Seattle. And if Andrew Lewis could get away with campaigning for his job 4 years ago, saying, I love the cops, more cops, our cops are great, turning around 6 months later, pledging to defund, and then turning around 6 months after that and acting like he never did it, then they're going to get away with anything. So I would say, Andy, maybe send an email to Bob Kettle's campaign saying, hey, I really didn't like that flyer. Can you explain your justification for it? And if he gives you an adequate response, maybe support him financially anyway, just so we can show that there are consequences when you behave as Andrew Lewis has behaved. Stonewall Gaston says Andrew Lewis has big money behind him, and that is what's going to make him win again. I think a lot of businesses pulled away from Andrew Lewis. I think he was a little persona non grata. And again, where he's at right now, performing around 40%, that is not good as an incumbent. I think it's more than he deserves, but it is still not a good place to be as an incumbent. And what you see in the results of that race is so 60% of people want someone besides the incumbent. So if that 60% of voters coalesces around Bob Kettle, then it's a done deal for Andrew Lewis. Trust me when I say that Andrew Lewis is panicking tonight. That is not where Andrew Lewis wants to be. And if he thinks that his reputation is somehow going to improve between now and November, that is simply not the case. To me, it really comes down to Bob Kettle not completely bombing it. And again, he has not come on with us. We've made multiple interview requests to have Bob Kettle on. I don't know what kind of speaker he is. I don't know what kind of candidate he's going to be from now to November. But I think unless he absolutely, what's the bed, then he should be able to pull it off, and Andrew Lewis will lose his job. You see how I said, what's the bed? Because I don't swear on the podcast anymore, because I'm a professional lady.
You're doing well.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, we'll read a couple more, and then we'll talk about
more super chats.
Okay, you want to read them to me because I get lost. Oh, wait. Okay.
Pegasus.
Can you mod a general election debate in November? Pegasus asks. I mean, probably not unless an outside group invites me. I will say one of the only things I miss about my mainstream media job is I was like the go-to moderator, because I was one of the only full-time political reporters on TV at the time. And so, I got to do the Senate debates and the gubernatorial debates. But the way those work is they pull those from mainstream media, as they should. I give my opinion. I don't think it would be particularly fair to have a moderator who is like said on her show that she doesn't like you or doesn't think that you're doing a good job. So for the sake of fairness, I also don't think that it would be appropriate to moderate a debate unless there's some sort of debate. I mean, you see like CNN hosts who give their opinion moderate like presidential debates. And so as long as it's like sort of clear that that's what's going on, et cetera, because I don't think that's very fair either. Like Anderson Cooper shouldn't be moderating any debates when he called Trump like a fat turtle who was baking in the sun on his back or something like that. I'm pretty sure that was the line, but I'm not 100% sure. In fact, let's spend the next hour, Nicole, talking about the indictment of Donald Trump. I know for a fact that's how you want to spend the time on the show today.
Please.
Nicole and I had dinner before this, and I was like, gosh, we probably should mention the Trump indictment, the 6,000th indictment of Donald Trump. And she was basically like, absolutely not.
That was basically me.
But I always struggle with that. We'll talk about it on the show tomorrow, and we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. But I struggle with it because it's like, well, it's news. Am I annoyed by just the continuing like investigations to nowhere and how divisive it is for the country? There's a lot of things that annoy me about that situation. But you can't just ignore it, right? So how about this? We'll ignore it on the show today. We'll talk about it a little bit on the show tomorrow.
We've already acknowledged
Okay,
it.
sorry. Copper Fire Mist. You gave me a super chat, but there's no question.
I know. I think it was just for fun. He wanted a
Just
little
for
shout
fun.
out.
Okay, I'm going to put a little Copper Fire Mist. I just hearted your super chat. I love the super chats. Weiss Castle says, I miss Ken Schramm. Yeah, Ken Schramm used to do like the Schrammies where he'd like, it's like you didn't want to get a Schrammie, right? A Schrammie was a negative thing. Something really nice, his wife, after he passed, had told someone that, and she'd emailed me that I reminded her of him.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
So
Super sweet. I was doing like The Divide at the time on Fox 13, but okay. Aaron Marshall said, so Aaron Marshall, who's running for District 7. Hello, Aaron. We're not counting you out yet. We haven't called the race. He says, my votes are coming in as busy first responders, business owners, and restaurant folk are notorious for voting the final weekend. I caught fire this weekend. You're going to see a come from behind win. All right, Aaron, we'll check in on things tomorrow when there's another round.
Attitude.
But it is, first of all, I think we should address the egregious voter turnout. Can you go to the King County page, Nicole, quick, and just check on what the voter turnout is so far? But it's usually around like 20% in an election like this, and that's awful. And then you do have, certain groups that tend to vote later. But which has kind of been weird over the years, because traditional wisdom used to be that progressive voters would vote later. Right? And then they'd have a come from behind. But lately it's been Republicans, so it's kind of all over the place. JSN said, were y'all drinking at dinner? No, but I have a thing of whiskey that I've been waiting to break out, and I was going to take some shots of whiskey if we had just disastrous performance from incumbents, but apparently I need to put that away.
It's not great.
It's not, what's not great?
The
voter turnout.
The voter turnout.
What is it?
No. I mean, the results that we've
Oh, yeah, that's why I'm not breaking out
great.
the whiskey. It was going to be... I don't drink for sadness. I drink in celebration.
Celebration. Okay,
yes.
I like that.
Yeah, so I would have had shots in celebration. Okay.
Voter turnout is about 19.
Yeah, 19 so far, which is just disastrous. Mike said, by the way, I have a pristine voting record. Sometimes people run for office and then it's revealed that like they hadn't voted since the 90s or whatever. So for many years, we were like taught in journalism school, you shouldn't vote. As a journalist, you have to just be above, partisanship, and you shouldn't vote even though it's secret. And I bought into that until like, I think 2016-ish. And then I was like, absolutely not. And then I've just got pristine voting record. It's so easy to vote here. So easy to vote.
It is.
A little humble
Almost
brag.
too easy.
Almost Stop it. Stop it. Mike says, elections in Washington remind me of the distinguished gentleman. Just all name recognition, not depth of person. Yeah, unfortunately, name recognition has a lot to do with it. Let me see here. I think we've got some good ones in. And we'll save some of these for the Copper Fire Miss, as Dory would be proud, ladies. Dory loved a good live election night coverage. I don't think they would bring in Dory for primary election night on an off-year election. During Dave Ross. But
we probably went above and beyond today.
Yes. Well, we can grab Dory off the wall over there, and he can hang out next to me. We got a big picture of Dory on our wall in here. Hi, buddy. Okay, I think that's all the comments we're going to read tonight, but appreciate you guys joining us. We're going to make this an election night routine. Who needs local TV news? You got to sit through the traffic and the weather. Yeah. You got to sit through the stories about the squirrels doing some sort of trick on a little mini jet ski. Whatever it is. All right. If you are not a regular viewer of the show, we will be back with our regular live show tomorrow at noon. So we'll have the latest on these election results. There'll be a new batch of ballots dropped tomorrow, but we'll also get back to our regular format. And there's some other stories that happened over the weekend that I want to make sure to discuss with all of you. So we will see you back on the live show tomorrow. If you've not become a subscriber to the show already, please do so. It's how we continue to do this show full time. You can sign up at undividedpod.com. Undividedpod.com. It's just $5 a month. Thank you for being here for this primary election night where Seattle voters have once again broken my heart. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the live show.